lived in Taylor and what he did. And about Grandma being the matriarch.
My granddaddy Taylor,
Yeah.
grandmother Taylor. Granddaddy Taylor was a cripple, and he operated a grist mill and a farm. I don't know how much farming that he did. Maybe not a whole lot, but anyway. This grist mill was across the swamp from the house, the home where they lived, and it's not uncommon for them to work until the wee hours of the night, grinding grain, corn and wheat, and probably some other maybe, but that particularly. And they had a real faithful black servant, and he was always most of the time working with them in the mill. And when they would go home across the swamp, and a lot of times they'd get caught without a lantern or without any kind of light to see their way through. And they would give the smallest child to this servant, because these people could see in the night better than white people saw, and he could find his way across the swamp when they couldn't. So they just gave the baby to him, and he went across the swamp and led them back home. So that's a good race relations for that day and time. And my granddaddy was a good businessman. Accumulated somewhere around 800 acres of land in that area around about Temple. But he was never a well man. He was always hindered by some kind of physical handicap. But anyway, he was a good man. And my grandmother was the matriarch of the family, just as my Ethel is the matriarch of this family. And so she would direct the destiny of the business. And we have a letter written by a pastor, her pastor, of what year I don't know, the letter's not dated, but anyway, he paid her the highest complimentary comments that you would want from anybody, describing her character and her faithfulness to the principles of the Christian faith, and how meticulously careful she was to keep those principles for the guidance of her own life and her family. And so that group of Taylors, by the way, he was one of the ones who came, I think, directly from North Carolina, from Mecklenburg County. And all of the Taylors spread out in the United States from North Carolina, some of the areas of North Carolina, and the major one was Concord, North Carolina, and Mecklenburg County. So they were from that generation, and we still have a picture of her, yeah, and she shows every mark of a patriarch in her picture, doesn't she? And Ethel's like that, matriarch of this family.
Not me.
No. She keeps us all straightened out. I can tell you a little bit about moving from Augusta to out to the Hipsa region. We bought a dairy bought a farm, and it had a few Guernsey cows on it. And so we added to this herd of cows until we had some, 25 cows, I guess, something of that nature. And so we ran on the hard times that everybody ran on back in the 30s. And we were not able to continue to make the payments that we needed to make. And my daddy found a place that he could handle better financially than he could that one, and we decided we were going to just do an old-time Western cowboy trick, and we drove the cows across field roads where we could, and lesser traveled roads, and we passed through one wooded area and swamp area, and we had one cow that hid in the woods, and we couldn't find that cow. But when we got to the new place where we were going out, Hepzibah area, we went back the next day to find this cow, and we searched the woods and fields, and we finally found the cow, and we had a dog with us to help us to spot the cow, find the cow, and the dog did. And so the dog attacked the cow and caught the cow sort of in the jaw here, and we finally were able to get a rope around the cow to bring her out, and the road passed not very far away from that, and so we finally got the cow out, and we were driving the cow along the road. A police car came up, and he stopped, and he started asking questions, who is operating this, and who's responsible for this, and so forth. And so he was about to make a case against my daddy for cruelty to animals. So, some lady in a car had passed by and seen us, and had seen us with the dog with us, and seen the bloody jaw of the cow. And so she reported us to the police. But we finally made it to the farm with the cow. And it was, we didn't have to do any time, serve any time in jail.
Didn't you lose some cows for the car hit several?
Well, after we got settled in the place, this Peach Orchard Road now, busy highway. And back in that day, though, it was a dirt road, never been paved. And from time to time, if a cow worked out of a fence somewhere and got loose and got on the road, they were hit by a car. We lost 3 or 4 cows like that. And one night, the cows were lying in the road. They had been out grazing in the fields around about. And they came back toward the barn and lay down in the road, and a car came through and hit the cows, and 2 of them, I believe, were badly damaged. And so what you usually do in a case like that is to butcher the cows real quick. But anyway, we had all kinds of experiences living at that place. By the way, we saw that road paved. The paving machines came through, and this was, I guess, the first one of the modern concrete laying machines, a machine that followed the pouring of the concrete and smoothed the concrete, and they did the full road, or half of the full road it was at the time. And so that was a big show for us, for this to happen. And we lived right close to that highway, and one night we heard a crash right almost in front of the house, and this was way in the night. And then we heard a strange sound, something that we never heard. It was a kind of blum, 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 like that. And when we got up and went out there, it was a load of Irish potatoes that were not sacked. They were loose Irish potatoes, and that was the potatoes rolling down the road that we heard. And we had a lot of experiences at that place.
Well, tell him about old Joe falling in the well.
Yeah, well, this was still another place. We were closer to Hepzibah then. We had a well that had some plank over the top of the well, and
where the chicken
You
got.
remember,
at
one
that-
chicken got in.
that was the same well where the chicken was in it, and Ethel brought the chicken out. But anyway, we were driving the cows one time from the barn down across the fields, and one of them got out on the edge of a group of cows and fell in the well. Went over it and broke the plank
Wasn't it the
in
most,
on the top
she
of it.
produced more milk than anyone you had.
Yeah, I had a real fine Jersey cow. And how the cow ever got the name Joe, I don't know, but that was Joe that fell in the well. But Josephine, I guess. But
Had to shoot the cow. Go and tell him all of it.
but anyway, of course, we couldn't get the cow out. We had to.
Had to have the well filled in.
Had to kill the cow from up overhead and have the well filled in. And I suspect that if it hadn't been a cow, it might have been one of the children. But we had a lot of experiences.
I think we'd be interested in knowing how your dad reacted to the cows getting out and going over to the neighbor's house.
Oh.
Tell him that story.
Well, my daddy was a man who sometimes reacted so unusually that he left people sort of in a state of shock. We had a habit of, if we harvested a field and left, for instance, velvet beans in the field, they always left velvet beans. And velvet beans are a favorite food of cows. And so we would run the whole herd of cows into the field and leave a man to watch the cows to keep them from getting on somebody else. And the cows, 3 or 4 of them one time got on a neighbor on a pretty far distant area from where we were, got into his field, and they shut the cows up in their corral, and sent a message by a man over at our house to tell us that the cows were there, and tell Mr. Taylor to come and bring whatever amount he was charging.
$20 back then.
But
that
anyway,
was a lot of money then.
Anyway, so my dad went over and paid him for him, told him he's sorry that the cows got in his field. And for some strange unknown reason, some weeks after that, maybe a month or so, 2 of this man's cows came on into our field, and my dad told one of the men working for us, says, put the cows in the corral, and so he sent him word to come get his cows, that they were in our corral. And he came over and he said, you tell Mr. X, and he called his name, said tell him to come. And he came, and he was talking apologies, and I called him Mr. Smith, that wasn't his name. Said, Mr. Smith, your cows came to bring my money back, and he was kind of mumbling about how sorry he was the cows came on us, you know. He said, they came to bring my money back, but Mr. Smith says, I'm a neighbor to you, and said, I will be a neighbor as long as I live here. And said, you take your cows back home with you. Said, I'm not charging you anything for it. And so he had him all apologetic. He was almost on his knees. He was so apologetic. But my daddy had a way of doing things like this. another one of the experiences like this that he had with a man was an argument over a piece of land in a corner where the lines to the land lines of each person came close together, but not all together. On his was not all together on our side. He was claiming a spring that was there, and so he told my dad, said, "Now that spring's on my side." My dad told him, said, "Well, now I'll tell you what, I want you to know now, as long as you and I live, there won't be any argument about the landline in that spring." He said, "When you want water out of this spring, get it." He said, "If I want a drink of water, I'll take a drink out of it." But he was he was like that. He usually dealt with people like this. And
how about Mr. Skigo and the equipment?
yeah, another thing that he did like this with one of the neighbors was he borrowed a mowing machine that we had, and while he was using the mowing machine, one of the drive shafts on it broke. He brought it back with the drive shaft broken, and my dad had put a new drive shaft on it, and he came back and about a week after that and said, "Have you had the have you had the mowing machine repaired?" And he said, "Yeah." And he wanted to finish the work that he was doing with the mowing machine. So he had a way of dealing with people
and
like
you
this.
might add the cotton sheets.
Yeah. Back in that day, we used baskets to put cotton in when they were picking it in the fields, and sheets, big sheets that you fill full of cotton. And my dad had a neighbor to ask him about borrowing some cotton sheets or cotton baskets, and he let him have some. And while the man had his, he had to put his on the ground.
That's the kind of man he was.
Mama, sit over there with Daddy. I want the two of y'all to tell a story.
You want what?
Get over there with him. Get over there.
Why don't you let Pop
No.
tell you about his call
No,
to the
get
ministry and
up.
all that, Jay?
We'll do that next, but I want to, while
Pop.
I'm thinking about it.
What?
There's plenty of
Okay.
time for that.
I don't look like getting in the
Hey,
picture,
Dad.
Jane.
I want y'all to tell me about the darkest day in your 70-year marriage.
About what now?
The darkest day in your 70-year marriage, when it almost ended.
Oh, you mean about LaGrange? Oh, James will never forget LaGrange.
We lived in LaGrange, and we still had strong feelings for Augusta. And it was the Christmas season, just after Christmas.
Day after Christmas, I think.
And we making all our preparations to come home and spend a few days in Augusta. And we were ready to leave LaGrange, and we were going in 2 or 3 cars, and James in his car went and stopped at a service station out on the edge of the city, and I needed to pick up some gas too, you know. I said, "Where's your mother?" And
It was Lauren, wasn't it?
maybe it was, but then one of the children said, "Where's your mother?" I said to him, "Where's your mother?" And he said, "We thought she was with you." And I said, "My goodness." And so I turned around and went back to LaGrange, to our home there. And I went in, and she was taking the decorations off the Christmas tree. And tell me what she said.
All right, I said, just go right on. I said, I had packed up enough groceries to last a whole week. We were going to Clark Hill, spend it there, you know. And I got to thinking about it after they left, that I had done all the packing up and getting ready and was checking out the last thing. And I looked out and they were gone. So I got to thinking about it and I thought, well, this is great. None of them know how to cook. And it's going to be too far to come back. It was from one end of the state to the other. And it was too far to come back. And I thought, well, this will be just good enough for them to get down there and have to do the old cooking for a whole week. And I'll be here and I could just do whatever I want to, you know, here and rest. And so when he came in, I said, just go right on, just go right on. And I refused to go for a while, but after he kept begging, I finally got in the car and went home. But I thought that would just be good enough for him to get there, that he'd do all that work himself.
That was the maddest we have all seen her.
But I tell you why everybody remembers it is because I don't usually get mad. James, how many times have you seen me mad?
I always do that look in your eye. I've seen that look in your eye plenty of times.
But when I get mad, I'm really mad. And it lasts a while. But that was funny, wasn't it?
All right, next.
You go ahead and tell us something.
Okay, you just
Tell something out of you.
tell something what, Jane?
Out of your life.
Mm.
Out of your life.
Out of my life.
Okay.
Well, I hardly know how to start, except that we lived on this big farm that was a carryover of a style like plantation, and we had all of these servants that worked there. And then when the boll weevils, Papa was really doing well, but then when the boll weevil struck, I think it was around 1925, wasn't it? I think it was. And of course, not many people had any money at all, did they? You could tell some stories about that.
We didn't have it.
I mean, about your customers
Yeah.
and all of the dairy. But anyway, I think it was around 31 when President Roosevelt started that WPA program. And then the black people who lived in the farm began working in town because they could get twice as much as they got, you know, or more. Because people worked for 50 cents an hour on the farm back then. And so so many of them began to work in town. And when I was a senior in high school, Mama had a very severe coronary thrombosis, and she was sick for 2 years. She stayed in the bed not all the time, but most of the time. So Mama stayed home and looked after her and let me finish, and she was going back the next year. But she got started back in, and all of her classmates had gone on, you know, and so she soon dropped out. But in about 1928, they sold the timber on that farm for around $28,000. Well, that was a lot of money back in that day. And of course, Papa's part was just about a fourth of it, you know, so he was able to pay off any debts he had and have a good bit, you know, left over to carry on. But those times were hard, and so I think that Papa ought to tell you about some of the customers they had during that same period. Couldn't pay for the milk or something.
We had a lot of people who couldn't pay for the milk, so we just kept delivering the milk because we knew they were honest, and we knew that they would pay it. And a lot of them did. For years after that, you'd have somebody stop by the house and pay it. Said, "Oh, your milk." Said, "I just now have gotten to the point where I can pay it," and they paid it. But anyway, it was hard times. And, to compare it with what it is today, we sold milk retail in bottles, where we also sold it wholesale in bottles. But anyway, the retail milk in bottles was 40 cents a gallon, 10 cents a quart, 5 cents a pint. And so when you, but it worked both ways. When the prices were so low on the commodity you sold, the materials you had to have to produce it were low also. 100 pounds of cottonseed meal cost us 50 cents.
Well, as we grew up, I finished high school at 16, and one day we were walking down Broad Street, and we stopped in this little 5 and 10 cent store called the Unity, and the owner of the store, who was the boss too, he walked up to Valmet and asked us if we would like to work there. And of course we never had any idea of working, and then we lived so far out too, so we went home and told Papa and Mama Papa pitched a fit. He thought it was undignified for young girls to work. He was opposed to it, but as we said, it was during the Depression, so they allowed us. At first we started working, you know, on Saturday, and so that was a nice outlet for us. And Winona married Marston when she was 17. She would have been 18 in January, and she married him in September. And Valmet married when she was 19 to Henry Bush. And Dale married when she was 18 to Hugh Price. And I was the oldest girl to get married because I was 20 when we got married. And Buster married when he was 19. He and Cecil had skipped out of their senior year in high school and gone to Florida to work as carpenters during that boom. That's why he really learned how to build houses and stucco and all of that sort of thing. And so he sent Mama home money for her to use, and she put it in the bank. So when he came home, he had enough to buy a Ford. I think they sold for about $500 by then, you know, and he had enough money to get married on. So, and when they got married, they moved in with us. And of course, with the 9 children, and Mama and Papa was already 11 of us, so that made 13. And within a year, Faye was born, and another year or two after that, Hugh was born. So that's when Papa gave him one of the houses, you know, that he had down there that used to use for the farm hands. And the other boys, I think they were in their 20s when they married, you know. But we didn't have to search for people to play with us. As I told you in the other tape, AK's children and ours, they were almost like brothers and sisters because we were double first cousins. And occasionally, Miss Mayo they ran a peach orchard at that time. It was Plato Nursery, but she had a daughter, Elizabeth, that was just about my age. And so she often invited me to come up and spend the day with Elizabeth, so Elizabeth wouldn't have to have somebody to play with, you know. And I always remembered that she served the meal, the lunch, so formally, you know, when I was there. She always had on the prettiest tablecloth and everything, just like she was entertaining, you know, real company. But I know Elizabeth got lonesome because she didn't have any girls to play with at home, and she had a brother whose name was Rudolph, and we called him brother. The teachers at school called him brother because that's what Elizabeth called him. And I didn't even know his name was the same as his dad's, but I didn't even know his name was Rudolph till he got grown. And Pierce was almost that bad about Junior, wasn't he? And Pierce resented being called Junior. And when Lord was born, he tried his best to get him named, nickname or some kind of name, you know, because he just resented it when people called him Junior, did most people do. But she called him brother, so everybody else called him brother too. That's your turn.
Daddy, tell us your favorite Sambo mischief.
What do you say? I can't hear.
Sambo. Well, favorite is when Sambo was a soldier in the army. He was on a troop ship that docked at one of the docks in France, and the ship struck a floating mine and blew up the ship, and it sank in the harbor, and they lost their rosters, and so they assigned Sambo and one of the other crew members to provide another roster, and they did. They spent their time writing all their names down again, and they decided they'd play a little trick. These two boys who prepared the roster, and they wrote a name on there that wasn't a member of the crew, and the name was Daniel Farbecker, and they had it arranged so that if one of them happened to be out when they called the roll, that the other one would answer to Daniel Farbecker. And so that worked pretty well, but they got caught because two of them were out, both of them were out one time when they called that roll. And so I'm presuming that Daniel Farbecker was posted AWOL, but anyway, they were a little shy and a little uneasy about whether they were going to get run down on that, but they never did. But anyway, that Daniel Farbecker name stuck by with them, and so when we lived at Fayetteville, I heard that story, and I decided I'd try to pull one on him. And your mama's sister lived in Norfolk, Virginia, and I wrote her a letter and sent her some money. He was smoking cigarettes at the time, and I told her to buy a carton of cigarettes. And I said, put this note in it and mail it to him, and I put his address in it, but here to mail the package to. And so he got the package. And he came over one day when I was puttering around in the yard, and he said, I just don't know, said, I'm worried about something. He said, I don't know anybody that I thought would have sent me a carton of cigarettes and put the name Daniel Farbecker. I said, anybody I knew, and said, the only place that name would have been known would have been on some of the crew members that were with us at the time. And I said, well, one of them probably just, I put on the note, just landed and thought about you and thought I wanted to communicate with you. Hope things are going well with you. Hope to see you someday. Sincerely, Daniel Farbecker. And he said, I would have thought it was you, but I know you wouldn't give me cigarettes. And I said, well, some of your friends did it. So we rocked on, and I waited about a month, I guess, and I read a book that was a blood curdler. The Rivers Ran East, and it was about a primitive Indian tribe in South America and all of their bloodthirsty and curdling things that they did, you know. So I sent this I believe this was another one she sent, but anyway, I wrote the note, you know, and put it inside the book and said, passing from Norfolk to, and I named the other assignments, you know, and so he got that book, and it wasn't long after that he came over one day after he had finished reading the book, and he said, I would have thought you was doing this. But he said, I know you wouldn't have sent me a book that was as blood-curdling as that one was. And so he was, I said, well, I said, you just got one of your good friends that's remembering you. And so I waited another 2 or 3 months, and Bob Richards was in Sasebo, Japan. And I told Bob to buy him a nice Japanese silk necktie, and I sent the money for him. And I wrote the note, you know, and I said, he said in the note, just here and there, said station for the time being at Sasebo, Japan. Said hope one of these days to get close enough to pay you a call. Sincerely, Dan. And I had a lot more than that in the letter, but anyway. He came over one day when I was out in the yard wearing that necktie, you know. And I saw him a good bit before I got there, you know, but I was just as unconcerned as I could possibly be about that necktie. And he talked with me a few minutes. He said, doggone it, said, it's not you. He said, I knew you'd double take me if you found it. Well, I said, what are you talking about? He said, this necktie. I said, oh, it's a pretty one. I said, where'd you get that? He said, that's another Daniel Farbecker gift. And he said, I know that it wasn't anybody else with in the crew. He said, it's got to be somebody that. And he said, I had a suspicion you. I said, well, why are you suspicioning me? I said, you got 2 or 3 of these things. And so he went on, and he was still not satisfied, I think, that I had sent it to him. Mainly because it came from Japan, I think. But anyway, wasn't long after that, Fletcher was born, wasn't it? It was Fletcher that was born.
First you sent another one that got lost.
Yeah, well, that one I just don't consider because I lost it.
It's been dropped out of a plane.
I fixed it up as if it had dropped out of a plane, you know, and I said just traveling from Norfolk to San Diego, you know, and so
nobody ever found it.
We don't know where that went, you know. Somebody probably found it yet. But anyway, when Fletcher was born, I went down to the hospital with him, and I didn't go.
Went the last time.
I went on my own, but I went there pretty close to the same time that Sambo was there. And I went by a flower shop and picked out a flower, you know, and told him, and I told him, I said, just passing through and heard about it and didn't have time to come by your place. I hope you named him Dan. Signed it Daniel Farbecker. And Helen caught it because it was too close to Sambo, you know. And,
they delivered the flower while you were there, and that's what happened.
That's right. She caught me in it. But anyway, I had a lot of fun with him on that over a period of nearly a year.
Now tell him about your surveyor job.
Oh, I better not tell you that.
Go ahead.
The Fayetteville, Georgia is on a direct line from Fayetteville to Columbus. I mean, from Atlanta to Columbus. And somebody put out the word in Fayetteville that the federal government was going to they were going to survey a superhighway from Atlanta to Columbus for security, you know, in the armed services. And so they got this word going around, and people were saying, if they come close enough, I hope they don't do this or that and the other, you know, to that place. One place, Wesley Murphy was one of them. He said, if they come near right up to my doorsteps, I hope they have to move the house back. And then 2 or 3 others left us a story like that. They hoped this didn't happen or that didn't happen, you know. And so we decided we were going to survey the community farm down there. And we went to these places where these people had made complaints, you know. And we drove a stake down. John McElmurray was, we got him to come up and bring us surveying equipment. And we got some
And
stakes.
the green thumb man, butts.
Yeah. Albert Burt came up with him. But anyway, they surveyed Wesley Murphy's house and they got right close to the doorstep and nailed the stake down. And that tour was left. And there was an old lady across the street that was a member of our church there. And she was looking over her glasses at them when they were surveying over there, you know. And John McElmurray came to pick up his surveying instrument. She said, "Young man," said, "you're not going to survey on this side of the road, are you?" He said, "No, ma'am."
And they put the stakes behind the red wines,
Yeah.
beautiful trees.
They had 2 big oak trees in the front yard and we put them right behind them, but we went all around over town doing this. We didn't say anything about that for a long time, though.
Well, the people never did find out who did it. They thought it was real.
Don't you show that around Fayetteville. We had a lot of fun at Fayetteville. Went fishing with Joe Edwards one morning. We used to go before daylight and come in and eat breakfast and go on to work. We went one morning before it got light, and Joe, when he left the house, they had a black Labrador retriever, and Joe just let the retriever in, you know, to get warm. And then when they left, he either forgot to put the dog out or left him there purposely, one of them. But anyway, when he got back home, he told me that his wife nearly had a stroke when she said she waked up and there were 2 yellow eyes looking right in her face.
He was laying straight out. She thought it was a black person that gotten to be.
It was.
Well, the worst thing happened to me when I was there was Sambo came over there and, well, start at the beginning. His daddy was having a hard time getting a school teacher, and it was time for school to start. He needed another teacher desperately. And he told Sambo, he said, "I got this letter from a lady named Miss Bigham," and said she had traveled every state in the Union, made the longest trips of anybody, and all she talked about in the letter was her travels and so on. Not a word about her qualifications to teach or anything. And Mr. Sams was saying to Sambo, I don't know what I'm going to do, but said, I'd like to see talk to that lady or something. Well, Sambo had the idea, and he came over to the house and wanted me to portray Miss Bigham. Well, I said no, definitely no. And so Pop kind of insisted on it too, but I never did say I would. The morning that he was supposed to do it, he had done all the arrangement. He told Hazel, his secretary, to pull the shades down so Mr. Sams couldn't see too well, you know, during the interview. And all of a sudden I realized he had sent his sister, Jimmy Kate, over to dress me up. And I said, I never have said I'll go. She said, you gotta go. They were supposed to come over and eat dinner with me afterwards. She said, you've got to go. So she got out a little cosmetic kit and blacked out a tooth on the front. She got one of Grandma's dresses and patted me, and I looked real fat, you know. And she got one of everybody wore hats back then. She got one of Grandma's hats and put on me, and she painted up my face and everything. And we've got a picture on those slides of me that Pop has. And they said, you've got to go down there and apply for the job. I said, all you're going to do is just walk in, and he's going to bless you out. And you know, that's all.
Now tell him what Mr. Farrell said after he interviewed you.
Well, I'll let you tell that part. But anyway, I just wasn't in favor of it, but they made me do it. So I went on in, and Opal knew to expect me, you know. And so Opal came in and carried me into Mr. Sam's office, you know, and introduced me. Said, I want you to meet Miss Bigham. Well, I think somebody must have told her she was coming or something, you know. So I sat down there. And he was so impressed, he wanted to hire me. And this was going to backfire. See, they were going to just laugh and tell him they just had a joke. And so he wanted to hire me, you know, and everything. And so, I don't know, I made some kind of excuse. But he came back and he told Sambo, said, you know, he said, that Miss Bigham came, and I was so impressed with her. He said, I'm going to hire her. And Sambo said, oh my Lord, what are we going to do? They were going to come over and eat dinner with us at our house. And he said, I got to tell him. And he said, what are we going to do, you know? And he was worried to death. So I was back in there cooking, finishing up lunch, and I still had on all that garb, you know. He said, go in there as fast as you can and take that stuff off and wash all that off you too. And everything. Said, when Daddy gets mad, said, he gets mad. And he said, I don't know what in the world we're going to do. And so I took all that off, and we went on and served lunch. And at lunch, he was telling Sambo how much involved, how impressed he was with that lady, and he was going higher and all of that. So they finally had to tell him what happened, and he would hardly believe it because I had already taken all
huh?
But anyway, that backfired on him because he was fixing to hire me. And then, you know what he did? He turned it on Opal. And she was really serious. She thought she was going to lose her job. You knew about that, and you planned all that, and I don't like it. And she called me up, and she said, I'm about to lose my job. Because he knew she was in on it, and, you know, did all of that. But that was his way of having fun with them. But James, sometimes we'll have to get out those old slides. One time when Brenda was here, we got them out and watched. Back then, you know, Pop wouldn't take pictures. He wouldn't take anything but slides. You remember that? Mm-hmm. So we got a picture of me. Miss
I remember that. No, I'd forgotten it, but I remember it.
Is Spurrier coming to?
No, he said he wasn't going to Florida unless he changed his mind.
No, to South Carolina.
Oh.
I don't think Holtz has made a decision yet, has he? All right, what else y'all got?
We haven't got anything else. We've run out.
Mama? Last chance.
You could tell James about your call to the ministry.
Yeah, Daddy.
That's hard to tell.
Well, tell it anyway.
Well, this was just a growing thing. It wasn't a fell swoop, or it wasn't something that happened in a moment. It was sort of a spiritual uneasiness, I guess you could say, and growing situation, becoming both challenging on the one hand, but also very much uneasy on the other hand. I don't know whether other people are like this or not, but you know, you feel like that you would like to do the will of the Lord, but you feel like you're not qualified to do it. And I wasn't, of course, obviously. But anyway, this continued, what, for a year, 2 years, something like that. And I finally decided when I couldn't shake off the new approach that was coming to me. When I finally decided I had to do something about it, I decided that I would do what some people do, and do it happily, I'm sure, also. And that is to take the courses of study involved with being a local preacher, they called it at that time. That is a volunteer person. You just have a license to do it, but you don't have a conference appointment for a full-time time. So I was going to do that, and I was in consultation with the pastor, of course, and he was giving me all the encouragement that he could, giving me some books. I still have some of his books out there. But anyway, when Pierce heard what I was planning to do, he sat down and talked to me. He said, now, if you feel like that you had a call to the ministry, he said, you disconnect yourself from all the other things that you have been doing, you are doing, or that you hope to do, and do that, and make your plans to go full time and to be prepared to take the appointment and to fulfill the job of ministry. So that's sort of how it came about. But I had at least 2 years, I'm sure, of real uneasiness and uncertainty and feelings of inability and a lack of qualifications for this sort of thing, and even an uncertainty about whether this is something that was really coming from as a call, or was it something that I was doing on my own. And a lot of preachers I've known have done that. I mean, they've gone through this sort of thing. So when I finally did decide to leave the farm and go back to school, I knew it was a long road. I went to Richmond Academy, and I stood one day and looked out a second-story window of a classroom out across the woods and fields and hills to McDade Road. And I said, are you going to travel this route? And I thought about how much I was missing being home during the time. You know more about this than I do.
Well, the professors didn't think you would stay in. I don't think the students did either. They called you grandma because you were 27 years old. And
they still call it grandpa.
that was before older people went back to school. It was the GI Bill after the war when they started, older people started going back to school.
One of my classmates of 1944, I graduated from Richmond Academy in 1944. And one of my classmates called me up the other day, about 10 days ago, or something like that. And the class of 1944 has a periodic 1 to 2 times a year they meet. They call themselves the classmates. And he asked me to come and have the benediction. And he said, you know, you're the oldest one of us.
And they invited the girls from Tubman, you know, to come too. And because it's for the girls and the boys academy and Richmond Academy. And so I went and I told Papa, I said, when I told him I graduated in 31 and he graduated in 44, I guess they thought I was a real old lady compared to him.
But there was a long ways to Tipperary.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one real great moment in my life. When I graduated from the theology school, we were graduating in the chapel, what now called the chapel. And we had on our graduation attire. And while we were being placed on the chancel up front, 4 of my best friends walked into that door from Augusta. That was a real experience. I can't tell you how it was. One of them was Mr. Richards and the other one was Glenn Radford. And 2 of our boys, I think it was from the Feedright Mill. But anyway, a real high moment. It was almost like receiving some kind of an award.
Well, you know, after that, when you were at Madison, you went to the University of Georgia, and he did all the classroom work for in history, for a degree in history. But we moved, so he didn't finish it up. But he did all the classroom work because he was so interested in history. So you really spent 8 years in college, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, he was just finishing up when you were born, James.
That's right, he finished high school.
Lauren was just a baby when he decided to go into the ministry. But I imagine it was a little difficult starting back in after having been out such a long time, you know.
It's not just difficult. It's some things that you have to just regain. I mean, you lost it.
Mathematics and all stuff like that again.
The things that you had forgotten, that you have to just learn it again.
That's right. And the schedule you had, as I told James, getting up at 4 o'clock and milking the cows and taking the milk in to Sankins and then going to school, coming back and having all that dairy to take care of again.
You don't do as well when you do it like that, though.
Well, you had the total responsibility because you see your daddy died in 41, so that was before you started back to school. But they were happy years too. James, do you have much memory about the farm. You were just 5 when we left.
I remember the farm, yeah. I remember where all the buildings were. I remember the chickens.
You remember falling off the hay wagon,
I
breaking your
remember
arm?
falling off the hay wagon. It
Yes,
was,
I remember when you did that.
It was
We
down
thought you were
a
with
little
Uncle
past
Bill.
the house on the road, the dirt road. And it was some farm worker I was with, I think. It
Tell
wasn't
him
with
about
you.
your plow
Was
around
it?
with him on the tractor.
Wasn't it with a farm worker, somebody you hired to do something?
Yeah, we had farm workers hired to. By the way, you used to go with me on the tractor when you were just a little fella. And you'd go to sleep and I'd have to catch you in the back of the collar like this to hold you. You'd be,
And I worried, I was afraid he was going to let you fall off. And you like to get, after Pop got so busy in the school, you followed Uncle Pierce around. And I thought you were with Uncle Pierce, and he had a young boy working for him. And this boy had a tractor with a wagon of some kind, trailer behind it, full of hay. You were 3 years
That's the one I
old.
fell off of, yeah.
And he allowed you to get up on top of that hay or whatever it was.
he thought he was doing him a favor.
And you didn't even cry. When you fell, you broke your arm, and you came in and you said, "Mama, I hurt my arm," and we saw it was crooked. So Pop didn't want to alarm you, so he motioned for the telephone, and I called, and they said, "Bring you in." And you went and they put the cast on and everything. And when we came home, I thought, well, they're going to have to reset it. I'd look around and you'd have the hammer with that arm, just using the hammer and everything. And I thought, well, they'll x-ray it, we're going to take it back, but I don't know what condition it'll be in. But everything was okay. The hammer didn't hurt.
I remember Lauren throwing the tricycle wheel at me. And he said, he saw it was
That
going to hit,
wheel?
he saw it was going to hit me in the back of the head, so he said,
mean
"Watch
that-
out," and I turned around and fell in the left.
Well, Pop and I were gone, and Aunt Thelma didn't take you to have that sewed up, You remember one time that
Balancing the
you were
hoe.
balancing a hoe in your hand, and it fell and hit Lauren on the head.
It was
And we
payback.
tried to stop the bleeding, and we couldn't. And finally, we had to take him, to the emergency room. And the doctor, he hadn't cried in it. But when the doctor finished sewing it up, he put him under a faucet, to wash his hair, all that stuff out. And then Lauren started crying, and the doctor said, "I can't believe it." Said he didn't say a word while I was sewing up his head. As soon as I started trying to clean up his hair,
What
he
about-
started crying.
What about the time that you didn't
Oh.
fasten my seatbelt on the car and I fell out?
Well, that was terrible times. Because we didn't know whether you were going to make it or not.
Oh, you mean when we had the accident?
Uh,
Well, what happened, that road wasn't paved either, good thing. And you and Lauren always stood up, on the back seat instead of sitting down, And so I started down that Richmond Hill Road, and there's a sharp curve like that. And this man had just come back from the war, I think, and he was learning to drive. He didn't have and most people who were learning to drive, they'll cut the curves. And it was just slightly raining, just a little bit. And I saw him coming heading toward me, and I pulled into the bank as close as I could go. The car was almost touching the bank there. And he hit the door right where you were standing, the four-door car, and pulled the door open and all the way back and pushed it up against the, you know, the side of the car there, and you fell out in that sand. And so when you got in the car, I put you up there with me, you know, driving, and we carried you to the hospital, and then he kind of went and unconscious or something. You remember that? And you were that way all night long, you know. And then when you waked up, you started singing "Jesus Loves Me," and then the first thing you said, it was Easter, and you and Lauren had the cutest little brown pants and yellow shirts, you know, and you were asking, "Where is my little yellow shirt?" You were proud of that little outfit you had on.
Lella.
So then we knew you were okay.
Little Lella shirt.
Lella, yeah. Where's my little Lella shirt, you said. Lella, I remember that. And and the doctor said, he's going to be all right. You had a concussion. And,
That's what's wrong with me.
And so you were fine from then on. But it could have been, you fell in the sand. And see the car, I was almost stopped, you know. I was just barely moving because I saw the man coming, you know.
Right.
And
Y'all gotta tell something about
and it was
Ann
real
now.
thick sand.
It's Ann's turn.
Oh,
I said it's time to say something about Ann. Oh, tell a story about Ann.
but if it had been paved, it would have been serious, wouldn't it?
Tell James the first word that Ann said on the way down the hill, Mr. Oliver.
She was about a little over 7 months old, and we could see that lake, you know, there.
Ognog.
And she'd say, "Ognog." I said, "Well, it's sort of Spanish-like." It's pretty close, wasn't it? Lauren's first word was light, and I can't remember now what James's was, but all of y'all talked early. Lauren's about 8 months old, I think, when he said light. And Brenda said that Chester and John worried about Mason because he doesn't talk, but most children don't talk much until they're 2. Winnow said hers didn't, and Dale said hers didn't either. But you all were making sentences, like when you got 13 months old, you know, saying anything. Little Brianna's like that. She talked fairly early, and when she did, she just could say anything, you know.
What about Olo?
How about what?
Olo.
Olive.
Oh, yes, when we moved to Stockbridge, and Brenda was born the next year, and you were six years older than she, so she, I guess, needed a playmate, and so she named her playmate Arlo, and she thought she was real. I mean, it was just as real as anything. And you know what your daddy did? He got over to the church and called the telephone and tried to tell her he was Arlo. He's changing his voice. And that baby was pitiful. I'm telling you, you know, she was 3 when we moved, so you know, she was real little. And she was expecting, you told us you were coming to see her, and she was expecting that child to come just as real as anything in the world. I can't imagine Pop doing that to a little baby.
All right,
But,
that just reminded me.
but she played with Arlo all the time.
Tell about
And then
the,
on television one day, I heard a lady say her name was Arlo, and somebody asked her, "Well, I've never heard of that name. Where did you get that?" She said, "My mother made it up."
Tell about the little old lady that called in the house.
What is he saying? I can't hear.
I think it was the Stockbridge daddy.
What?
That the Stockbridge daddy had been calling you, disguising his voice.
Oh. he'd get over there, disguise his voice, and make me think he was somebody else, you know. And then Mrs. Clark, this most dignified member I think we had, called me one morning, and I said, "Okay." I don't remember what else, but I knew it was Pop, you know, calling. And I said, "Okay, what do you want now?" She said, "Why, Miss Taylor." And then I had to tell her that he was always calling me and pretending he was somebody, you know. And I said, I was so sure that's who it was. I said, "Okay, what do you want now?"
And then there was a time Lou Reese called you.
But who?
Lou Reese. You remember Lou Reese in Augusta? Wasn't that her
Yeah, I
name?
remember Lou Reese, but I don't know what you're talking about.
You, she had I guess a Georgia Hills vocabulary. She said "whar" and "thar," and she called, says, "Whar's Brother Taylor?" And you said, "I don't know whar he is."
I had forgotten about that one. But Pop and Pierce was just as bad as Pop was with these pranks like that. And I told him, I said, our family, I mean, they never did do anything like that. All they could do, I guess, was hunt and fish and stuff like that. But they like Sambo. They just love pranks. Tell him about your daddy and Walter Scott. I mean, Walter Frost.
Walter Frost's wife was very jealous, and my daddy was. There was a lady that we served milk to the store where she worked. So my daddy made up a lot of stuff that he told Walter Frost in the presence of his wife, you know, what this...
He made it up with a girl to do that.
So she gave it to him and laughed and said, you know, I really enjoyed this, I enjoyed that, so on and so forth. And it almost caused a separation in their family. But
And I was surprised.
My daddy shouldn't have done that. He got too far.
He never told them it was a joke. See, he had made up with this girl the next time he came in there to let on like she'd been dating me and all like that, you know, because he knew how jealous she was. And they went in there and she said, "Oh, I'm glad to see you. I haven't seen you since the other night when we saw you so-and-so, when we were at someplace, you know." And of course that woman was just jealous as she could be anyway, so I don't know what happened when they got home. Oh, Dad was afraid to tell her after that it was a joke. It was a long time after that, but they did get a divorce. I don't think that had anything to do with it, but I told Pop, I said, I can't understand why he didn't tell her that was just a joke, you know. But he went so far, he was afraid to tell. But that wasn't fair to the man, was it?
No, it wasn't.
So I guess they got it honestly, didn't they?
Well, I guess they did. So Bob will be glad to hear all of this pranks and stuff. He'll be able to understand where he got it from.
When James, you were talking about what all we did. See, Willie and Valmay and I were all in the same grade at school. And there's 6 weeks' difference in Willie and Valmay's age. And yet Willie chose me to go spend the night with her every time. So I stayed over in Capes a lot of the time. And when I'd go home, Uncle Shirley would come over there and said, "Why did you come get my girl?" But anyway, our chore was, they had the most beautiful red horse you have ever seen. Anna-Kate always rode him in the parade and everything, you know. And Willie and John and I, all three, she was so gentle, you know. All of us would just get on a bareback, you know. And we'd go way down there, you know where Buster's house is? Down property went, you know, to the back of that. And we would have to go down there and drive up the cars, you know, when I was over there. And one time we were over there, and Willie kept pushing. I always had to sit on the back, kept pushing, and I fell off. And Willie looked around, and then she fell off. And then John begged us to get back on. We couldn't because we had to climb up on the fence to get on the horse. And there was no place to get back on, and we were kind of mad with him anyway. And so when we got up to the gate, he begged us to get on there. He said, if I go up there without you all on here, Papa will whip me. And Willie said, well, I hope he does. You know, we wouldn't get back on there at all. But anyway, one of the times when we went down there, and every time I saw John, he told me that without, even just before he died, he'd say it. Balmain and Willie always said, damn, every now and then. I never did. Mama wouldn't allow me to say it. I suppose she was preparing me to be a preacher's wife, I don't know. But she never would let me say anything. And so we went down there to get the cows, and we were walking this time. And there's this little terrapin was down there. And he kept sticking his head back in his shell, wouldn't stick his head out, you know. And we were trying to tap on it and trying to make it stick his head out. And I stuck my finger down, and he stuck his head out and bit me. And we had always been told if they'd bite you, they wouldn't turn loose till it thundered. That was what they always told us. But he bit me. And I looked up and I said, that damn thing bit me. I don't think I had ever said it before, or not much since. And John, I thought we were just a kid, but he and Willie, they got the biggest charge out of that. Because Willie would say it, and Balmain would say it all along, you know. But every time I saw John, even after we got old, he'd walk up to me and he'd say, that damn thing bit me. So that was one of my worst times. Because Mama always said I was the best child she had.
That's
she
what Mama
always said I was so obedient.
That's what my mama always said too. That's what my mama always said about me.
And the rest of them thought after I had that pneumonia and I almost died, they thought I was Mama's pet, but really she was just trying to keep me from getting sick again. But the last time I saw John, that's what he said.
You never told me that story.
So I confessed my sins to him. Because Papa never would say things like that, would you? Well, Mama wouldn't let us cut with scissors on Sunday. She thought that was a violation of the Sabbath. We couldn't cut anything with scissors. Papa's family wouldn't let him go swimming on Sunday. Mama let us go swimming, but she wouldn't let us cut with scissors. What about yours, Pop?
No, we couldn't go swimming on Sunday either. We could cut with the scissors, I guess.
That was a big activity, yeah.
That was a little too extreme, I guess.
Well, I tell you, we had a good time everywhere we went, I reckon.
We really did. We had a happy life.
At Glenn Memorial, we had less freedom to pull pranks and do things that we did at the other places where we were.
You didn't do anything except when you got with Sambo, though, did you? I don't remember.
I did things on him that he didn't know about.
But I mean, only when we were at Fayetteville. Well, I don't remember any other pranks you did.
At Madison, I made my biggest mistake.
Wow.
I had to take the exam again. I should have taken it, but I didn't. Over at Georgia.
One of the professors at Augusta College let you take the exam at home, didn't he?
Yeah.
You sent me there, and
That's
he
the-
gave me the exam and
I want
to
to tell you.
bring to Pop.
I want to tell you, that was the nicest thing I've had. I had the flu on the day that they took it out. I was in the bed, I think, yeah. And I told your mama, I said, go by and tell him, you know, that I hope he'll let me take the exam at some other time that I had the flu, you know. He just took out the paper. He said, take it out there and let him take it where he is. Oh, that's Galloway. By the way, they got a building up there named for him.
Yeah.
Galloway Building.
Boy, they have really changed the interest, built all those new buildings at Augusta University, they call it now. But it's really, really nice.
Oh yeah, you've seen it, have you? Since they added to it. They have. I guess they've doubled the capacity, haven't they?
Yeah.
They doubled.
They're trying to work to get dormitory space, you know, out there where that Newman Tennis Center, you know, they used to own really it was a huge hotel. I hate to see them tear it down. But they are thinking about building some student housing out that way.
You know that you know where the house is at the Medical College of Georgia, the president lives in. The house next door to him on the corner, you know, that's a new home. And it's a big home, 2-story home, and just a big thing. I bet that's for students.
I bet so. Because that, it would be much larger if they had, you know, dormitory.
Yeah, I don't mean dormitory, I mean rental for students.
Yeah, I know.
Somebody who lives there to rent for students. Because it's 2-story and a huge house too. I got to go to bed.
All right.
We bet you used enough anyway, Jane.
Yeah, it's about gone. All right, we'll sign off here. Say good night, folks.
I guess we ought to tell
Good night,
James
folks.
when we move home.
Good night, folks.
Say good night.
Good night, folks.
Okay.
When we were at Stockbridge, and you know, we were worshiping in the educational building, and in Lawrence, one of the Sunday school rooms up there, there was an old alarm clock there that was broken. And so Lauren decided he would take it home with him and fix it. He stuck it in his coat pocket. And right during the service, I heard this tick, 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 and I wondered, what in the world? I started looking around, and Lauren had that clock in his pocket, And I said, what in the world would have happened if that alarm had gone off right in the middle of the service? But he always liked to play with mechanical things, you know. He thought he could fix it, you know. So that was so funny. Well, one of the funniest things Pop should have told you, that one of the funniest thing ever happened was when Pop was at Fayetteville. And over at Hampton, he was asked to come and preach a revival. And Ann went with him every time he'd go anyway to preach like that. She loved to go with him, and so she'd follow him. I mean, go with him. And they got there, and the song leader had a little boy. He looked like he was about 5 years old, and he sat. His mother didn't come, so he sat right up there on the front pew. And back then there was no air conditioning, so they left the doors open. And so right in the middle of the service, here this old dog came in, running right on up, you know, to the front of the church. And the little boy sitting on the corner of the pew, he got up and kicked the dog and trying to make the dog leave. And the old dog started howling, you know, and going out. And they were singing, "Come thou fount of many blessings," you know. And so the song leader was just a member of the church, you know, and he was standing up, you know, right in front of the little boy there, you know. And so while they were singing, he caught that little boy by the arm and jerked him up and took the song book and wore him out, just spanked him good and didn't miss a beat singing, "Come thou fount of every blessing." And Ann said if she had looked at her daddy or if he had ever looked that way, she said, I would have had to get out. She said that was the funniest thing she ever heard. And then one day Ann was playing for the altar prayers at the close of the service at Fayetteville. And you know there was a curtain, you remember that heavy curtain behind the choir loft, and somebody had left a door open to the educational building, and a dog found his way in. And Ann was playing for the altar prayers, and the dog came in and ran across the base of the keys on the, you know, the organ, and it started going boom, boom, boom. Ann had just cut the organ off right quick. So we had quite a few funny experiences like that. And Brenda, you know, got sick with that earache and all when she was a baby when we were at Stockbridge. And she had to have about, well, I've forgotten how many shots between Christmas and May when she had the tonsils removed. And we'd have to take her down to McDonald, you know, for the shot every day, you know, when she'd have it. And then wait about 10 days and start up again, and we'd have to start it all over again. And so she got to the point where she'd see anybody dressed in white, and there was a nurse that taught her a class, you know. But anyway, she'd start crying, so she'd see anybody with white on. She thought they would give her another shot. And there's a photographer over at Flippin that loved to take pictures of little girls, and they had a little niece. They didn't have any children. Cowan was his name. And he'd always want to take pictures of Brenda. But he made the mistake of saying, "Let me get a good shot." And when he mentioned shot, she was associating that with her illness, you know, and she's have a fit. But we had a lot of funny experiences like that. But you loved to go play with Millie when you were 5-year-old. And you were the only child on the block that knew how to tie shoes. So you had to tie shoes for all of your little playmates because you're the only one who knew how. Do you remember that?
No.
And I said, you and Lauren always got this, when we were on the farm, you got these little wind-up toys, you know, and little cars or trucks or whatever, you know. And I had to get the different colors because Lauren always wanted to see what made them run. And he'd tear his up pretty quickly, you know. And then he'd want yours, you know. And I said to you later on, I said, Lauren just had that gift of wanting to work with things like that, you know, and find out what made them run. And you said, well, the reason I didn't do it was I already knew. You remember saying that?
No. But I did.
And you all would have weddings at the house. Bobby Dale did Layla, you and Leela, and you'd get old curtains and dress up. One of them would dress up like the bride, you know, and then Lauren had seen Bobby and Ann and Adele, you know, play weddings and stuff like that, you know. And so I think it was almost Pop's first sermon or two, I don't remember, but it was when he first started at Bath. And there was a couple out at Fort Gordon wanted to be married, and they didn't have any family or anything, so they said that can't we just get married right at the close of the service, and while everybody, you know, is still there, you know. And so Lauren was little fella, and he was standing up, you know, in the pew. And when the bride started in, he says right out loud, "Here comes the bridie," because he had heard Ann and Bob and Dale and them talking about, you know, here comes the bride. He wasn't over.
Tell about Lauren's first.
Over two, I don't get.
Tell about Lauren's first date in the car. Tell about Lauren's first date in the car.
First